After a fairly lovely summer that seemed almost like the pandemic never happened, Germany got a bit of a spike in COVID cases at the end of the year, calling out the lockdown light in November 2020. Which does not only sound like a low-fat product or sugar-reduced something, but was also about as effective protecting social life and the healthcare system as its nutritional equivalents help lose weight effectively and sustainably. And from there on out, transitioning into a harder and harder lockdown until lockdown became life. Literally. Until the country started opening up this month, actually quite quickly once the cases went down. 7 months have passed and this is how long it's been. I actually started growing my hair during the first lockdown in 2020, but I guess you kind of get the point. I'm really not searching for a silver lining here or anything, but I guess we all got a lot of time to think. Like, I keep asking myself, has ever a disruptive moment in history shaped their haircuts all around the world? I guess it has. I mean, situation's bad, but I guess there have been worse. Anyway, let's get from what I don't know into the lessons I have learned, and unlike this intro, I'm actually pretty serious about. I personally like being alone. I like having time for myself. But as nice as the idea of having time for yourself and living all alone at some remote destination on a beach or in a mountain hut, as nice as this idea seems, it is probably hopelessly romanticized. I'm a 21st century Western world human who was born in the city. I don't have a clue what it means to live all on my own for years to come, let alone in some remote destination. I don't know. I imagine being nice, sure, but that's the result of overstimulation by media, the internet, and living for years in a place that is literally packed with hundreds, thousands, and millions of people. It is not really surprising that the romance I imagine is rather the exception to it, if not the opposite. No matter how much you think of yourself as an introvert, there comes a point where as a human you start to miss company, proximity, and exchange. So if I ever really move into a mountain hut, which is kind of a dream of mine, I guess I'll better make sure people are able to get there. I'm able to get out of there to hang out with them, because fuck romanticism. I'm in love with reality. Whatever that is. You may have been there. It's finally time to work on your goals. Go all out, 24/7, because the only thing that can save you in these times is hard work, right? Wrong. In times of stress, depression, and anxiety, what won't help is what usually triggers stress, depression, and anxiety these days. Of course, that goes not for everyone. If you love your work, awesome. But if there's one thing I'm by this time certain about, it is that this quote is bullshit. When you really, really, really love something, like really deeply love it, you will face times when it won't love you back, when you will hate it, when you will struggle, when it will push you away, when you will push it away, and eventually find back to it. That's usually how relationships work, I think. Which is fine, even for your work life, when everything is at least kind of balanced out. But in times like the past 1.5 years, it kind of became clear to me that hustle is just another dye I can paint my pain over with, so that if I do not actually enjoy it, it at least looks like it. Which is as empty and meaningless as a thing in the world could be. At the beginning of all this, pretty much everyone foretold the premature death of the tourism and aviation industry, amongst other things, because the worst is yet to come, right? People have been saying that, people keep on saying that, and they will keep on saying that. Since one day a bad thing will happen that is somehow in some way connected to the past, and that is their moment to shine and say,
I told you so.
Which does not really help anyone, doesn't change anything, but it's a highly promising strategy to be right eventually. And bad things happen, sooner or later, let's face it. But so far, the world did not come crashing down.
The worst is yet to come.
Economy still keeps running.
The worst is yet to come.
Planes keep flying.
The worst is yet to come.
And people keep traveling. And all of this is not to say that damage has been done and people around the world have suffered from the consequences, and I do not in any way take this lightly. Yet, what fascinates me is that people keep on going and things that were supposed to meet its end don't. there is just something that in ancient times made us cross seas and deserts without knowing what to expect at the other end of it. And I think the same thing makes even the most unadventurous scary cats amongst us go for a hike or camping somewhere. Whatever it is that calls us to set out, I hope part of it makes us meet somewhere along the way. I mean, come on, we all know this is true. Everyone has an opinion about everything based on some vague facts, personal ideas, biases, fallacies, stories you heard somewhere from someone who knows someone who knows someone, and it all makes sense, totally. It always does. But that's because of how our brain works, not because it actually makes sense. And that whole opinion thing, I'm not an exception to this, and definitely have not been over this fun period of time, but it kind of has reached a point where I'm just like, we live in a time where you cannot be skeptical without being called a skeptic. A time where you cannot question science without being considered a conspiracy theorist. A time where you cannot question conspiracy theories without being accused of being a submissive puppet of the state. If individualism has not provided us with much of an answer about human nature, it at least has given each and every one of us his personal reality and the arrogance and ignorance to believe that we know what we know. And if you truly are a truth lover, here are some truths. Let me start by saying, if you feel like you cannot be sure about anything, there's one thing you can be sure of, and these are your thoughts. Someone else figured it out and said, I think, therefore I am. But that's not all there is it? I am because we are. Taking that into consideration, it kind of dawns upon you that you are a product of your environment. And nothing is good or bad in the world. It is thinking that makes it so, which might actually mean perception is an externally guided hallucination. But you are not your thoughts. So what are you actually? Who are you? The truth is, you don't know. What you consider your identity is the mere reflection of society, the meaning of your life given by the people around you, of which even the smartest ones to this day do not really know what that consciousness of ours is, what makes us think and therefore lets us be. And my humble opinion really is just that if these are things we cannot wrap our minds around, how can we expect to really know much, if anything at all? Which is not to say that we should not try to do so. But if there's one thing I feel I really have learned over the last months, it is that for the little we know, we take ourselves way too important. Tribalism is something like culture or privilege we are not naturally aware of. You could say we are blind to it. That's natural, because it's natural. So initially, there's nothing wrong with it. Tribalism creates cohesion, but it also creates separation. And if we would not call ourselves Homo sapiens, which, from my understanding at least, cannot only be translated to the wise human, but also be understood as the aware or the reasonable human, it would be totally fine to pit ourselves against each other and lead passionate wars about superficial differences. But it is because we have the capacity to do so that I think we should know better, which is a topic you can and other people have filled books with. But here's a nugget for you. It's not that your vibe attracts your tribe. Actually, it's the other way around. Your tribe feeds your vibe. You are not the center, the group is. And you just identify with it. Kind of makes sense when you think about it. You hear what you want to hear, and they give it to you, give you more and more. Which has nothing to do with free will, truth, or being on the right path. It's just submitting to your basic instincts and fallacies, so actually quite the opposite of it. And if you think this is all wrong, I know this won't convince you otherwise. I've gone over some philosophical, psychological, sociological, and probably also neurological stuff without specifically mentioning it or even knowing what that means. And if you do not believe in science, that's fine. You don't need to. Because most of these things you can prove to yourself simply by being aware of them, by being on the outlook, and sooner or later you will catch yourself. But only if you consider the possibility that your perception does not equal reality. And if you don't, that's totally fine. There are also words for that, like naive realism, cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, and by this point, I must sound like a terribly annoying smartass. But here's the thing. Up until last year, I didn't know about most of these things myself. And it just strikes me that most people, basically everyone, basically me, lack the understanding of how our mind works. I mean, sure, it's great to have a good understanding of economy or politics, but wouldn't it actually be even more interesting to understand why we behave the way we behave in terms of it? Sure, it's a field of research and science, yup. But what I discovered for myself is that these fields of knowledge are not as prestigious or as elite and incomprehensible as society, whoever that might be, wants you to believe. And this is something I don't understand, which really, really frustrates me. Why is it that these days we seem to be educated about almost anything, but lack the basic understanding of ourselves? I really cannot be mad at anyone who, in these truly depressing times, or even before that really, has turned to alternative or new narratives, whether it being New Age prophecies, conspiracies that aren't conspiracies, religions of any kind, classic activism, or even capitalism, because literally everything seems more exciting than what we actually have in front of us. Apparently no ambition at all to move towards some greater collective dream or goal. The most exciting mainstream narrative we currently have is that we'll go to Mars and become an interplanetary species, which is exciting. But if you're like, well, cool, but I kind of like it here on Earth, well then, friend, the only thing you have left is cynicism. The average Joe or Jody doesn't look forward to get things done, shape a better future for our children, or improve the quality of life for everyone on Earth. We do not take the challenges in front of us head on. We just want to get by. And I don't know how it was for you or how it was in your country, but during the time of a worldwide pandemic that essentially affects people, it felt like economy came first and people came second, which is a pretty shitty slogan to run, well, anything. And I know that I sound cynical now, but what I'm cynical about is that all these beliefs about how terrible we are and how little we're capable of, how lazy, hostile and selfish humans are, the more I learn about it, the more I learn about us, the more inaccurate this actually seems. Yet it is a narrative that helps other people sell you shit you don't need to impress people you don't like in a world that does not offer you any perspective for genuine progress or change. And the problem is not that humans are lazy, hostile, and selfish by nature. The problem is that we've believed it. I see you.